eating good, drinking good, thinking good thoughts. Trying to get to this to where it looks straight, but I guess it is what it is. Thinking good thoughts, having a good time, sharing good energy with good people, in good places, doing a good things. Okay, that fell in my lap. I feel like I'm gonna take that to start this and open this up with. A lot of healing and vitality should come about as you hear me communicate what I need to for this message. So abundance, success, and boldness is pretty much falling into your lap because that's what fell into my lap. Ooh, funny because I've been eating these blackberries a lot because girls gotta have for berries. And then I also I'm wondering if I can be heard. And then I'm also reminded of some readings and how I talked about the grapes and in the unions, how everything is. The numbers were sticking. My daughter uses my iPad sometimes, but in the unions, in one of the older readings, how it was like someone that's going to feed you grapes. So that goes in line. But I just want to be clear that like healthy love, which is what this reading is about, just is healthy love for people, for yourself, for especially for those who are in your home, right? One of the things that I was reminded of too is that sometimes all I can explain it to is my own experience. When I had my son, right after I had him, I experienced a love that I never felt before. I never felt a responsibility, an ownership, a commitment to someone else. I hadn't had any siblings, so I was an only child. So, I had cousins and those were great, but they left, right? They lived somewhere else usually, right? So for me, having a child brought up all these feelings of like intense love. Um, and I'm reminded of that because I'll just go ahead and share. Um, for specific reasons, it was determined that my children were going to ride the bus for the rest of the school year. My oldest son is 18 years old. So he can decide what he wants to do on his own. But it was funny because I was like, well, I'm going to walk you. And I did because my younger daughter was there and she and I like to like pretend like they're following us. It's just, something like, oh my gosh, look, they're going to follow us to the bus stop kind of energy, just in case anybody was wondering. But it was just funny to me because when I had him, it was just kind of like I felt weak, that I felt like I couldn't lead someone else. I felt like I couldn't, not be responsible in the circumstance and situation, et cetera, which is true, right? But that doesn't mean that it's unhealthy. And that's, I think, where people struggle with like the feelings of love and how to recalibrate themselves to understand and accept real and true love for what it is. But we'll talk more about this. So it's the part of the title and the subject is that they aren't programmed, like they're the neuroscience, their brains. And I did look up on the neuroscience and the actual psychology of the brain. And there's all these other studies coming out too about how like who you meet in your ninth grade and how that affects you. But anyway, but the neuroscience to express healthy love has to be recalibrated in people who have experienced unhealthy relationships as a result. So it said, so this is where it all got started for me personally was I was listening. I stumbled across a quote that said, I just need a boring love. And I was concerned because I was like, boring? Why do I want a boring love? But anyway, she said, a love that doesn't need fights or arguments to keep the fire alive. Let's sit and read on opposite ends of the sofa type of love. And I thought of you when I did the dishes today, love, because love languages are real. But just thinking of someone else and being like, I know, babe, gonna do the dishes when she here. Let me go ahead and knock them out. That kind of energy. And I would rather be at home with you right now, love. And some people, feel struggle with the, like, I would rather be with my person than to be out with my friends. And it's not unhealthy, right? If you think of it in the type of relationship with my son, it's like I didn't have him on the bus because I wanted to make sure or ensure that like his to and from was specific, It's a way of showing you my love, right? And some children start catching the bus early. My daughter was thrilled about it because she's always wanted to, but the boys realized the value in going to school later and having to wake up later, etc. So, but when I experienced the love of myself to my child, that responsibility, it felt shocking. I should have known then that I had been a man in a previous life because I was just kind of like, I don't want to love anybody. It's making me weak. I felt weak. That's just the truth of the matter. I remember calling a girlfriend on the freeway and I was like, I feel weak. I feel like it was just all these emotions. So, and I needed to recalibrate and refurbish that, right? In order to accept, the responsibility of love. Okay, this is where it goes, right? So love to me is not boring. And for someone to say that to me is kind of like a misconstrued mindset. It only gets boring because you don't allow yourself or the person that you're with the room to grow, which I'm going to get into. So neurologists diagnose and treat and manage conditions affecting the brain and the spinal cord and disorders of the nerves and the muscles that activate movement and transmit sensations from around the body to the brain. So essentially what I'm talking about is neuroscience. I've looked up studies on this, okay? On how these relationships affect you, okay? Now, I also wanted to be a neurologist when I was 19. So it was deeper than psychology is how I felt. And it felt like, oh, okay, let's go down this hole. So why do I bring this up? Because it's all about the brain, right? Conditioning, group thinking, right? Left side, right side. To me, politics is group thinking, but anyway. And how this affects or effects people, right? Mental health, which should be of grade A importance, right? You can see it be bad in politics, right? People go to these extremes to prove that their political's this and this, right? It's group thinking. A lot of people may not like that because they love their politics, they love their politicians, et cetera, et cetera. But this is the neuroscience that I'm discussing, okay? Now, mental health should always be of grade A importance, no matter what it is that you're addressing, be it politics, be it relationships, be it business. The way you think about things and how you address them should always be of utmost importance, and how you feel in those instances too, those environments, a stressing work environment doesn't yield you the room to be creative. Let's just be honest. You feel stuck. That's why. But anyway, so mental health is grade A, grade of high importance. It should be the highest, paramount. Many don't believe that they're suffering of anything just because of their relationship history, which is not true. Please understand that I view my hairstylist as someone that I have a relationship with too, my manicurist, etc., and so on. So I consider all relationships when I'm talking about healthy relationships, healthy love. I love the way my hair looks when she does it. And we'll get further into that, right? Now, manicurist, etc. Now, many people don't realize how often relationship trauma can send people, but it's likely also someone who like that it can send some people into like some type of psychosis, right? But like that they would develop schizophrenia or bipolar or this or that. They see so much of it being chemical, but again, there are other studies that are in Finland. I think it was on like 17 or 70,000 people that show like the correlation to those things as well, the neuroscience. It all has to do with neuroscience. Again, it's all about the mind, right? So anyway, so many people don't often realize how it could have been relationship trauma that took people over the edge, right? That's when you hear about people like going manic and going crazy and all this other stuff, right? People trying to run people over with cars and all kinds of stuff, right? It's an emotional thing, right? Now, this is not to say that people cannot experience these emotional traumas and still be of sound mind. It's that recalibration that I mentioned, the refurbishing of your experience, saying, okay, this experience wasn't for me, so I must go ahead and move forward with I must go ahead and move forward. I'm sorry, somebody caught me off guard. Well, so then why are you here, Big Back? Why exactly are you here? If you don't care about this, which clearly tells me a lot about your neuroscience, which I think you should go get help on. So don't be in my, what is the purpose? That's very small of you. That's all I can say. It's very little. Anyway, so many people don't realize that, but anyone that you have a relationship has the responsibility to reciprocate that which they receive. So your hairstylist is going to reciprocate doing your hair nicely, right? That's why you work with your hairstylist, right? Or your barber, right? It's because they line you up good. They don't make your forehead go all the way back, right? They don't be having you with a crooked smile and stuff, right? That's why we do it, right? So when those relationships, and it's about stacking a person too, like the more consistent the person is with lining you up and getting your beard good or curling your hair the way you like it, the more consistent they are with knowing you, right? Now, so everybody has the responsibility to reciprocate that which they receive. If they do not, this is not your problem. That's what most people don't tend to realize. It's not your problem unless you choose to create an environment where that type of relationship exists. Like, oh gosh, every time I ask her to do this with my hair, she's doing this. Well, you're remaining in that relationship, right? So on and so forth. So it only becomes your problem if you want to have it. Now, an instance, let's make up a hypothetical instance that things like this could happen. For men, it's like your barber, let's say your barber does your whole head, right? Everything here up. So he gets your beard, he even does your brows if you want it, he does your whole lineup, everything, right? But then he starts getting so busy that he needs to hire someone else in order to that's so funny to me. I'm a big back. Sure thing. Meaning that I can carry a lot of weight. Absolutely. Anyway, that person's funny. It's a lot of your insecurities, and that's why I keep laughing, because to me, it's like it's embarrassing for you. At the end of the day, think about how you're going to feel after you sat in here doing this in my comments. I'm just letting you know. But anyway, back to what I was saying. So it's not your problem if they don't choose to reciprocate the same type of energy that you're giving them, right? So if your hairstylist keeps canceling on you, you don't have to keep going to see them, right? Same with all the other relationships. If they start, you say, okay, I want to keep this, or, et cetera, et cetera. Or they may say, I'm getting too busy. I need to hire on someone else that can take care of this part of you, but I got your lineup. And you go with it and you try it, but you don't like how this person, like maybe this person does a little, stringy mustache or something, but it's like, you have to also be comfortable enough in any relationship that you have to understand that their changes in their life are going to cause them to grow and have certain needs that may change. So your hairstylist growth, in her business, or barber's, growth in their business is going to cause them to change and have other needs, right? And they may have to introduce other people to facilitate those things. As a busy parent, you may need a nanny, right? Or someone to come in and do, the housekeeping for you, right? And you expect that those relationships are going to be healthy and that they're going to love the service that they provide, because if people don't love what they do, then they probably can't bring that same energy to what they're doing, right? So anyway, let's see. And, if it's an instance of like, okay, it's a barber, right? Or a hairstylist. It's like, okay, if the barber or hairstylist already did their part by bringing in the third party to help, right? Then it could be as simple as having to switch them, right? It could be as simple as like, okay, the insurance policy that I had no longer covers, so now I have to leave this agent and go. So you have to be accepting that needs change throughout relationships, and you have to be comfortable with that, Even in marriages, that's often why marriages and relationships fail, is because they have a change, that takes place, and their needs change. And it may not always be like, physical. That's what some people think, but it may just be like from their heart, like they need something different. They need to not go out every weekend and go to the movies. They may want to, do something different. But anyway, back to boring love. Oh, wait, no, we're not there. So the only time that you really probably need to remove yourself is when it gets messy and toxic. Okay. So, and that, and unhealthy, right? That's when it's time to go at all costs. You always leave relationships at that point, right? For some, they move on to healthy bonds where there's security in their commitment because both people want to achieve it. So it's kind of like, oh, okay, your new person that brings you, the new salon that you go to, that person gets you together really well, right? And you guys bond over that, and you guys have a commitment. And this person says, you should probably, they look through your hair, this, you should probably come every 2 weeks, this, that, and the other, don't wash so frequently, it's drying it out, whatever they need to tell you. But I'm not a hairstylist, I don't know. But anyway, so that's how you move on to secure bonds. You establish new relationships. You have to just be open to it. The hindrance of your heart is what will actually deter you. You know what I mean? Especially if you haven't received it, especially if you're used to like people who are, constantly negative and stuff like that. And you'd be like, oh, that's just how that person is. If it's not how you are, though, shouldn't you deserve the same type of treatment and response to you? And how you're treating the other person? You're still coming, you're still on time for your appointments, you're still paying full price and adding your tip and all those things, right? So, anywho, let's see what's this next part. So it's mutual respectful partnerships, and that's how also some people are capable of even having poly relationships. They have mutually respectful partnerships. A lot of times, what we saw in the days back when this used to be more prominent, the reason that they accepted it was because the wife wasn't really a business person. They were just able to they only held the capacity of being a wife in that aspect. They weren't like an equal. And then when a man would meet his equal, he would want to take another wife. We've heard about that in Egyptian cultures and things like that. So that's how those relationships work. Oftentimes though, there always had to be a benefit. So even sometimes it was like the benefit of the land, and ruling bigger locations too. So that's how it could relate to it being a business type relationship, but also considered a marriage. Okay. But let's see. So if you're with the hairstylist, too booked up, don't have time for you, whatever, or the person's not open to your growth and the new things that you need in the relationship, etc., etc. It's no harm, no foul, right? People are supposed to accept it like, hey, I don't like what you're about, you don't like what I'm about, or I don't like how you've changed, you don't like how I've changed, or I don't like, what they got going on over there, so I'm gonna go over here. That's the difference. That's how you're able to recalibrate or refurbish your energy, your life force, your heart space, right? Is by leaving those relationships, right? And people don't realize the neuroscience and the toxicity and how it like can mimic actual love and how it creates that trauma bond and anyway. So no harm, no foul when people accept and move on to create new healthy relationship. Healthy means meeting the needs, wants, and desires of another person in an organic way because you've conditioned yourself to do this in all relationships because they are all relationships, right? Your hairstylist, your child, your spouse, relationships, okay? Some people have relationships with their mechanics, right? They're there all the time with their car, or they might have a project car that they do, an old vintage something, 1962 Grand National. Okay. Anyway, back to boring love. So when I read that quote, like I said, I was offended. Like, what do you mean a boring love? And all of those things that she described I didn't consider them boring, but people have been conditioned because of the toxic relationships and encounters that they've had to think of quiet relationships, peaceful relationships as boring, right? So yeah, it's that brain, it's that imbalanced brain chemistry on why people view it as boring versus stable and peaceful. People who have had long-term loving relationships, they have a reduced activity in the amygdala, the brain's fear center. So people who have had a long-term loving relationship or have had long-term loving relationships, they have reduced activity in the fear space of their brain, right? the brain's fear center. Studies show that holding hands even can decrease the pain perception. And I thought about like me and my daughter, how like when we go on our walks and we'll hold hands and stuff like that. And it is a sense of safety, right? And I'll notice when she does it when there are people that, she may be concerned about that are coming in our direction too. So yeah, so I wrote down there, like, think of a child crossing the street, right? We were taught that as children, like hold hands and look both ways, right? It was a safety, right? So that's what all of these things in healthy relationships should create. You should be in a stable attachment syndrome with people, other people who are stable and dependable. That's my point there. But let's see. Also, it kind of lends to like, because the part of the brain center that it affects, that part of the brain center is it basically holding hands decreases pain perception due to the endogenous opioids and oxytocin that's released from the brain. So your brain releases opioids and oxytocin when you feel things that feel stable. So that's why, you see the misuse, in my personal opinion, of such drugs, of opioids and oxy, because it creates something in the brain center that feels, ooh, good, right? But anyway, that can cause someone to be desensitized, right? That's what tends to happen with all addiction, right? That center of the brain becomes desensitized to the other things that created that. So like an alcoholic can be totally desensitized to their family and not realize how much it's, tearing and ripping apart their own family, right? We see that. It's all addictive, whether people think it or not. You may be addicted to having toxic relationships, because if that's the type of relationship that you keep allowing yourself to be in, right? It's that whole recalibration. So yeah, it's a lot of, or people like, okay. So for instance, your ability to detect pain is being affected. It's being desensitized. So you can no longer really even discern pain in the same way that you're used to. Same way as a gambler, someone who has a gambling addiction. You can talk all day to them about how bad it is, right? That does not mean that they're not going to sit in front of that slot machine or however they work nowadays. But this is how people mistake a person's attention for love, right? Because in addictions, it's always the attention of whatever it is. It's the ringing of the slot machines, right? The noise of the atmosphere, things like that. And that instance, that slot machine or that bottle of liquor is mimicking the reciprocation that is lacking from the relationships that people should be concerned about, which are with their loved ones, right? Then there's also this misconception of like, oh, I'm going to be paid back for this investment, right? Especially with gambling, right? Like, I'm going to sit at this slot machine for XYZ amount of time. And, it sounds like an attachment style, right? It is. It's all mental instabilities or misplaced love, right? I'm placing my love on the slot machines because I know I got 6 kids at home. Peaches McIntyre, she's very honest about it. She recently like, what is it called when you like ban? Yeah, she banned herself from the casinos. So she can't get in, but she did it on her own. And that's huge. She had to go through that instance though. For some people, they have to, where she felt the energy of losing everything. Did she lose everything? No, she lost a lot though. She lost what could have been everything, right? But it was her recalibration, her ability to say, you know what? This is not what I need to be focused on. My family is. So instead, she put that energy back into her family and started decorating the house. And, so she's making moves in the right direction. And that's what recalibration and refurbishing is. But you're supposed to only do that in situations where it is reciprocated. So she's doing it in the right places by, decorating her children's room at their new home, So, anywho, so where was that? Casinos. Yeah. So that's how your brain is tricked into seeking out chaos for validation too. So you're seeking out the chaos of potentially losing everything at the casino in order for the validation that you could actually do it when you win and hit big. Okay. But that still doesn't explain why love is boring to some people. Or is it? Like, is it actually boring? Or is that these things that we've encountered in other relationships that cause us to see things this way, right? Now, growing up having trauma bonds. In elementary, someone had a grandparent that passed away. Oh, I remember this. Okay, I wrote down the whole little story. Just so I was in elementary school, and another little girl came to school, and she was crying, and she was upset because her grandfather died or something like that, right? I didn't really know the little girl. She was a little bit newer to the school. That's just me. But then I start to trauma bond with her in the fact that I had lost a grandparent too. But this was a great grandparent, and this happened before I was born, and I never met the person, and I was probably like 9 months old when they passed, right? But you have to understand the depth of trauma bonds, okay, and how it also brings in genetics, because this is a part of your neuroscience, what you grow up around, right? So I start crying. Next thing you know, there's about me and like her and then like maybe 3 or 4 other girls running around the school crying until we finally get to this teacher who we think will be empathetic enough. And he's like, well, when did your grandpa die? And he asked me because I was, second in line or for however we ran up there. But he was like, when he heard, like, when I told him, like, it was before I was born, he was just kind of like, I could see the guy's brain fry, even as an elementary school teacher. And I realized in that moment, like, but I'm a small child, so what do I know, right? So, but I saw how that, it was a trauma bond, and he's in his mind like, what the heck is going on? And he's thinking like, okay, so, but that's just an example of how like easy it is, right, to trauma bond with someone, and it's a difference between having empathy. Trauma bonds are where you continue to forge and connect and have these instances of traumatic experiences or chaos. Okay. Anyway, I'm sorry. I keep remembering that teacher's face. Okay. Okay. Now, let's see. So, and the only reason why it had such an effect on me, even though I hadn't met that family member, is because my family had explained to me like their experience and how traumatic it was to lose him, because that was my great grandfather, right? He was the one that was, receiving all the awards from the religious organizations and was leaving the legacy and had become very renowned for his profession and all these other things. So it was kind of who had created a sense of community, all those things, had adopted children and ran organizations that helped people in the churches, all kinds of stuff. So Catholic churches, because that's what was big back then. But et cetera, et cetera. So I understood then that love had no bounds. That was what I knew in my heart, even though the teacher was probably realizing something else, which I now realize, which is important, because that's what all people need to realize, like how quickly trauma bonds can take place, how quickly, those instances of attachment, if you're not careful, and then how to remove yourself is what we'll get into anymore. Empathy and love have no bounds though. So that's also a part of it. You know what I mean? And I should have been acting. I was not acting in the improper way. I probably was a little dramatic, but at the end of the day, she probably felt very comforted and understood in that instance. Okay, back to love being born. So growing up having trauma bonds can cause the nervous system to interpret peace as boring. Okay, simply because it's so unfamiliar. Okay, so if there's someone who grew up and they grew up in the hood and the ghetto, and they watched everybody around them get murdered and stuff, they created trauma bonds through that experience. And it can, decrease that, you know what I mean? That love center. How can love feel unfamiliar? Well, the absence of emotional spikes is the only thing that's missing in healthy love. So it's the only thing that's absent from what they consider to be boring love versus what this chaos actually is. And, all these other things that we experience in trauma bonds, et cetera, et cetera. The difference between the two is that there are no emotional spikes. You're not on an emotional roller coaster in a healthy relationship. My son is not on an emotional roller coaster with me as his mother. He knows that I'm going to be there for them. I committed to this. I understood how, it made me weak. But who wouldn't be, right? Who's not weak for the people that they love, right? To some extent, you kind of have to be in order to open your heart, right? You can't experience it, right? But anywho. And I always used to say I was the type of person until I had my son. I was always the type of person that would say, oh, I would rather never experience love than to experience and have to lose it. But I also always understood losing it would feel bad. But with my son, it was kind of like, okay, I accept that one day he's going to become his own person, right? I accept that one day he's going to live his own life, right? And I just need to make sure that I'm reciprocating, with him all the loving things, right? In order to continue to grow our and build our relationship on that foundation. And and again, I try really hard not to be a helicopter mom. So that's one of my struggles. But anyway, okay. Okay, so the difference between those toxic, traumatic, unhealthy relationships and real healthy relationships is the absence of the emotional spikes. So there aren't these emotional roller coasters. That's why it feels like this. Over here. Over here. Oh, I love him more. I don't know. Over here. All right. Now, how can people get past their discomfort? Because it's always the new relationship that brings up our triggers, our traumas, our experiences, et cetera, et cetera. And how can we determine when people are healthy for us, right? How can you get past the discomfort of the boredom or peace in a relationship or by yourself in relationship with your highest self, even? Because some people, if it comes to the realization maybe they don't want somebody. um, Change the pattern in my relationships and create new ones. So how can I do that? That sounds like a loaded question. Although, as you sit in peace, initially, a good task would be to help others. So when you find yourself in those more moments of boredom and things like that, just emotionally, go and do something for somebody else, not necessarily the partner that you're being bored with, right? Because they may be in that space of needing their peace in their space, to go do whatever they want to do. So that's one of the things. That's how to change the pattern in relationships. If your person, goes into the room and closes the door, you could go decide to go shopping at that point, right? Just switch things up is always a good thing. Changing the pattern in relationships, creating new patterns, right? Now, let's see. Also, keep in mind too that helping others can get very involved and complicated the more you do it. For instance, um, I wanted to teach a class at the YMCA, a Pilates class at the YMCA, right? And what I learned in that instance is that I had to provide all of the materials. And so then it became a different task, right? Because now I've got to get mats and balls and all kinds of stuff, right? So that changes. So, like I said, no matter what commitment you make, you may decide, oh, okay, this is too much for me. And it's acceptable to walk away from things that are going to be too extraneous when you look towards helping somebody. But be as clear and as quickly as possible, remove yourself, right? So it's not just, set high expectations and low stand. I mean, yeah. What is it? Set. It's basically not meeting the expectations. Anyway, now let's see. For some people who are really having to leave like relationships where they're realizing they're on the opposite end of this, like some heartbreaks may just be that people need to call a crisis line. Don't feel like that's above you. If what you need is to be heard, it's just like someone holding your hand, right? It shouldn't make anyone feel inferior to need help. That's also a part of the shame that comes with like whatever these experiences have been. It's like all of this shame around feeling hurt when we all know that it's a real true emotion and that we need to learn how to heal it, right? So that's often what society and everybody does. They just push it back and push it back and push it back, and it's not a concern when we can see people rot from it mentally. Neuroscience. Anyway, yes. So again, this may also be why people ended up making patchwork blankets, right? Finding new hobbies, right? This is how people find hobbies is, when they break up. Those are positive ways to reinforce yourself and the things that you like and the changes that you've made and the stuff that you desire to be a part of your life, right? Um, ba-ba. Let's see. So also inner child work is super huge in my opinion. So Um, like I said, new hobbies. It could be just as simple as like a model airplane, just to get you in the right energy. A mosaic craft, a small one, Target's $5 section or Hobby Lobby or something like that. Little crafts are really good. Target has a really good $5 section where you can get a little craft, and it's really good for just bringing back that youthful energy because, again, we have our whole lives to be adults, right? So, let's see. Getting past the discomfort, changing your pattern. I won't go to the casino during the week. So for some people, it may be smaller. Getting, I won't, I don't know. I don't know what people are struggling with. Like if it's as small as like, oh, I won't go look at their page. Okay. I won't set boundaries for yourself, especially if you know that's an issue. Um, so like I won't go to the casino during this week. Then gradually create a new relationship with yourself and others. Okay. If you don't have the ability to do things for others, tackle your things. Closet needs to be cleaned out. That junk drawer, that everybody has. For some people, it may be counseling or joining an AA group, whatever it needs. Because at the end of the day, it's about putting yourself back into a positive mindset and energy, right? Acceptance, accepting that you've been hurt, that you felt the pain, that this was bad, that et cetera, et cetera. Acceptance is the first part, okay? And the part that most people struggle with. Accepting that you've endured the pain is the only way that you'll actually heal. Think of, for instance, like if you chopped your finger off, you got to accept the fact that your finger is, and it usually happens quicker though, right? Because it's your finger. Well, with this, because everybody kind of pushes it to the background, it's not something people can see, right? It's a pain that lives within, right? That's also how mental instabilities take place. So again, it has a lot to do with neuroscience. I'll give you the information on the research that I looked at too about that. But anyway, so cut your finger. You're going to have the knowledge that it's cut and it's hurt before you can attend to it. Okay. All wounds require healing, even the ones we don't see. And those that we don't see, it's because they exist in the soul, the mind, or the spirit. That is simply why, and that's why I do a lot of communications about, being, what I like to call it, balanced. So being balanced. Because if not, it spreads, right? It spreads from your mind to come to fruition in your life, right? We've all seen that happen. And then, it's also kind of like, well, if you avoid the problem over here at your business, then it's going to affect your home life and vice versa and so on and so forth, right? So you have to kind of nip things in the bud as well and bring balance because it's going to affect the other, right? It's kind of like one of those the sayings like don't poop where you eat, right? You made your bed, now lie in it. It's kind of that energy, which communicates like you can't avoid your past in order to release it. You have to say, okay, this is my past and I'm releasing it. Otherwise, it just sits there right behind you, right? Also includes making plans towards your future, making active plans towards your future. To me, they're all one and the same to me, all of it. You should be doing it all. Examples of healthy relationship patterns can look like love languages. I know everybody's so exhausted with hearing it, but think about it. It really does feel good when someone else thinks of you, and you can see that, right, on a daily basis because relationships, just like the one you have with your creator, right? All right. Create anticipation, the excitement of getting to do this, whatever it is, planning things together, new things, flirting, teasing, planning surprises, keeping it playful, being silly, dancing in the kitchen, expressing your desires, and again, take it for whatever compartment it goes in. You know what I mean? You're not going to flirt with your kids, right? Obviously. But you might flirt with the idea of them going to this wonderful summer camp, right? Because that's something you're preparing and planning for them. So don't think that you cannot create healthy relationships on all levels because that is what we are here to do. It's about the reciprocity. That's the word for the week, reciprocity. Go to an arcade, skating, painting, try on stuff at a mall, go shopping together, grocery shopping, make dinner together, cook together. Expressing desire also means your emotional safety is going to increase, and that's going to increase your intimacy, right? For me, it's like making sure that I take the time out to do things outside of the house with my children, to go to the movies, to go to the restaurant, etc., etc. Um, ba-da-ba. Let's see. Take phone breaks together where you put your phones away and you just spend time hanging out with each other. Play a board game, a card game, whatever, and get into the habit of really talking to one another. Um, you do it with your barber and your hairstylist, right? Because some of these professionals know all your business, right? Some people's hairstylists and barbers know all their business, right? So again, the relationship. And those are the ways to get past the discomfort and enter that space of healing, creating within yourself and by yourself the highs that you felt. So the high moments, the safety of that holding hands, create those environments for yourself. Okay, that's what's most important. Um, so creating within yourself and by yourself some of the highs that you either did or did not have, or some of the highs that disappeared from your life if they were associated with a person, right, that got taken away. Um, so that's important that you do that. Oh, if you're just feeling not like yourself, like if you're not feeling, zhush, if you're not feeling like you looking like the man kind of thing, that's when you should use healthy mirror magic. And I want to make sure that I explain this so that people understand what I'm into. So mirror magic to me is huge. And I want to explain what I guess people call hoodoo. I didn't know that was what it was. I thought I was just building my self-confidence. But mirrors are reflections of oneself, right? So the feeling when you get all dressed up, right? And you look in the mirror, or it may not be an everyday feeling for some people, right? But you're allowed to use your mirror to invoke that feeling within yourself, to use it as power, to feel confident, because that's what we need too, right? Confidence is huge. So that's why I brought mirror magic up, because that's the one thing, and that's you and you on a daily basis. It's showing you, right? So you're allowed to use that mirror to invoke within yourself a feeling of power and a presence of purity. The way you do that is by lifting your spirits when you pass a mirror. Each time, just like when you're posing for photos, okay, look and see your handsomest self. If you don't see it right away, find your, I don't know my angles. I just be here. Uh, so catch yourself and, in your own, beauty or handsomeness, and then wink at yourself, or smile at yourself for a minute. That's what mirror magic is. That's how you use mirror magic for healing, in my opinion. That's all I use magic for, is healing. And this is the type of thing that I do. That's how I use my magic. Okay. So that's what people call hoodoo. I just call it building my self-confidence. Again, I thought I was just making myself feel better. My intent, and that's also the part that they say differentiates hoodoo from voodoo, is the intent. My intent was to increase my confidence so that I would feel good about myself and not be insecure. It's not against someone else. It's not to be looking better than this person. No, it's to feel what I need to feel for my own self, in my own space, on my own terms. Now, does catching my best pose mean that I'm going to have a brilliant day? No, but I got the feeling of that. I know how to re-invoke that feeling, right? In its most pure and, meaningful way. Isn't that why we were always, given the opportunity to have a reflection? Because before mirrors existed, we could see our reflection in the water. Okay. Anyway, it's a part of freedom of expression of self. Anyway, so do it to feel self-confident. There are many magical ways to use these things. Intimacy is also often misunderstood or taken to mean touching and kissing, which it is not. And this is also going into the healthy signs of a healthy love relationship. So intimacy is communication. It can include touching, okay? Thoughtfulness. I did the dishes before Mom asked me. Exploration of curiosity. So since you don't want to go to the movies, what do you maybe want to be, do you want to still do something together? Curiosity. That's the big word too. People often neglect the word curiosity when they're in long established relationships, when they've been together for a long time. And that's usually why it becomes so bland or boring, is because there's no more curiosity. But that's a misconception. That's a trick, right? Because if you think about the aspect of a relationship, you should always be curious about your person. You should not be stuck in some type of thinking that, oh, I know you better than you know yourself, or I know she gonna want to go to the movies, because it's Friday. You know what I mean? It's kind of like that. I know you better than you know yourself. And, this is what you want and this is who you are. That's essentially what happens in those instances. And that's how people end up in really boring relationships. But that's why you should always be curious about your person and about, changes, or just always open to those, always open to doing things differently or better, or, trying stuff out, right? Um, so this is someone who's not allowing you to pretty much take center stage. When someone says, oh, I know you. Oh, I know. Like, how? We are always getting to know ourselves better each and every day. Like, right? I know, more about myself at 46 than I knew when I was 26. So how can someone else who's not there for every minute, right? That's someone who's trying to hold you in a box, or keep you complacent, or won't allow you to take center stage over your own life. Stifling is what I call the energies, the stifling energy. Someone who, you need people who are going to allow room for growth and changes, okay? Being curious about those as well. Healthy relationships are intimate enough to handle those changes. Healthy relationships are intimate enough to handle those changes. Healthy relationships are intimate enough to handle those changes. When my son decided that he didn't want to go into engineering and instead he wanted to, be a veterinarian, healthy relationships are able to take and accept those changes. I really think he should go into cybersecurity, but I'm hoping. Anyway, so showing interest, your interest should change as you grow and get older, right? That's how you, and knowing that and accepting that is how you have actual intimacy and get to know someone. And that's why most relationships where people accept people and they love them in the correct, proper way, that those relationships, it's like you keep seeing their intimacy grow. It's like, dang, they kids off in college, their kids all married now, and they grandparents, and they traveling all over the place. It's different than what they were doing before. Anyway. So showing interest through curiosity shows that you're present in the relationship too. You want to be intimate enough to ask what's changed in a relationship, that you and the other person feel free enough to express that too. And that shows that you're interested in exploring them on all levels as well. If this is your hairstylist, if they mention the business growing and the need to hire new people, that is them expressing and communicating their needs are different and what kind of changes that will have on the relationship, right? All right. So it's like saying, oh, hon, I think I want to look into working from home because I think I want to open my own firm, but this will give me more time because then I don't have to take the time to travel. Those are healthy conversations. But, when there isn't, like, oh, the last time you started a firm, and it's like, I'm expressing to you my desire to do something that's really passionate to me. And I'm expressing to you how I want to take the steps to do it. People in uncomfortable relationships can't do that, right? It also has to do with people stacking too. So this was a concept that I've just become aware of. So people stacking, it's getting to know someone. It can look like stacking people up, like the information about a person. So imagine a person as a Jenga box, right? All the wood pieces to a Jenga set. So it's basically, as you get to know someone, you're stacking all the information that you know about them, right? To build Jenga, right? And if there are pieces that you have to remove, like these could be small things too, like, oh, this person likes green. Oh, their wife is from Chicago. Oh, their 12-year-old plays soccer, right? Anytime that you remove a piece of that's like untrue, that can create a tower moment. So now you understand the kind of like tarot synopsis of all of this too. So if you understand a person as a Jenga, When you meet them, you're inserting information. Oh, they like green. Oh, they went to this university. Oh, they married this person when they were 17. Oh, they have 3 children. Oh, their son plays soccer at such and such. You're stacking all this information up on the person for their Jenga. And when you remove a piece that you find out is not true, it puts you and that person's relationship at risk, right? The whole whatever you knew or how you felt about them, it creates a tower moment, right? Where everything can fall down. And that's essentially what happens when you remove yourself from the idea of that you need to get to know someone and like continue to stack and, but not falsehoods. Of course, the falsehoods, when you see those, run. Let's see. Yeah, so when something in the middle becomes untrue, pulling that piece out has a potential to put the whole structure at risk, to create a tower moment in the relationship or the friendship. That's why creating secure attachments is most important. These are where you can depend on the person to hold your hand, right? And that you can also let them rely on you in turn. It's the reciprocity, right? It's a form of reciprocity that creates healthy and healing environments so that you can change and grow and it can be accepted. It's an environment where this is accepted. Change and growth is accepted, right? Secure attachment relationships are built on honesty, tolerance, and emotional closeness, right? For me, for instance, when I realized the person couldn't tolerate that, like, this is who I am, I'm a helpful person, and they wanted to, backbite or spread rumors or whatever people be doing, you remove yourself, right? Let's see. Secure attachment relationships. Yep. Secure attachment relationships are built on honesty, tolerance, and emotional closeness. People who have secure attachments thrive in these type of relationships. Think about it, how far people go, together when they have the right support. People who have secure attachments thrive in these types of relationships, but at the same time, they value and are comfortable with being alone. So those are the secure attachment people. They thrive in those environments, but they're secure enough to be alone as well, and comfortable enough to be alone, which is also what I think, what's her name? Tracy Ellis Ross was saying, but like people want to misconstrue it. She was just saying like, I haven't found anyone and I know that I'm different and I know that I'm unique, but I've also seen these things. And then they want to like harp on her dating younger men. But what I found is that oftentimes, or more instances, there are younger men who are hip to healing and behaving right. And maybe they've been burned enough and they're like, okay, no, I want a good person. You know what I mean? They're willing to take that leap of faith again. That could be the issue with older men. They've taken the leap of faith too many times that their faith has dwindled. It could be the same with some younger men too, right? Because a lot of men will tell you that it happens with the first person, your first love, your first crush, your high school sweetheart, all the rest of that, right? Anyway, so people who have secure attachments thrive in these types of relationships and value and are comfortable with being alone as well. Basically, they lack insecurity. They're not insecure people, right? And they're emotionally stable, right? These individuals have a positive view of other people and themselves. So that's why a lot of them hold other people harmless. Like, okay, that's not for you. Okay, you like the mustache? I don't like that mustache. I gotta go. They don't hold, people in contempt because they aren't who they need them to be. They release it and go find who they need to be with to get the right mustache. I'm just saying. They lack insecurity and they are emotionally stable. These individuals have a positive view on themselves and others. This allows them to not seek external validation or approval for how they feel, what they think, or what they want. This is because this type of person can successfully identify and regulate their emotions and even help other people to do so. Yeah. So for instance, like if it's, your healthy relationship is with your hairstylist or barber, and they tell you, good advice, or you get good advice from them, you see how that works, right? I think I've gotten like where I've told my hairstylist something. She told me what to do, right? They probably sat around a lot of people who heard a lot of stories too. So they have to understand that they've probably done a lot of people stacking. But your hairstylist or barber may be the type to chime in, or they may just listen to you, or they could be a combination of both, right? But whatever it is that they do, right? This aligns you guys, right? The fact that they know how what you're talking about when you say whatever the style is, the fact that they knew, within the first few visits that you don't like this and they got it under control and they didn't do it again, kind of thing, right? You become in alignment, right? When this happens. And that's why it's work. It's like your schedule always aligns with theirs, or you understand the value of being regular and routine, right? That could be something that, they need from clients, you know what I mean? Versus people always calling, the Wednesday, Thursday before, can you book me on Friday? Right? So the alignment, right, is important. Their desire to keep you on their books and to have someone else provide a portion of their services to you. Um, and that's not just what you want. That's where you come out of alignment, right? And need a new barber or hairstylist, right? That doesn't mean that just because you had to discard that relationship or that friendship or that this or that it won't work for someone else, right? Everybody's experience is not yours, right? We're all individuals, right? So that doesn't mean that someone is quick to discard. It just means that they are discarding relationships that are necessary for life to be what they want it to be. They don't want the curly mustache. I can't keep stop saying that. I keep thinking of that because not everybody wants that. But I think people who rock it, they rock it, right? Anyway, this doesn't mean that someone is being dismissive either. If like they go on a couple of days and then they know very quickly that they don't want to be involved with the other person. It's not just somebody being dismissive. It's just because they also don't want to depend on other people. It's about what your requirements are, right? If someone can't meet your needs or requirements in a relationship, you can't depend on them. So then your needs are not met and you're in an unfulfilled relationship. If your job says well, we want you to provide, your workspace at home, your technology, so all of that, your Wi-Fi, et cetera, and your databases to do said job, right? Someone came in and said that to you after you'd been employed with them, it would probably change the dynamic, right? It would probably change the fact of whether or not you were going to continue in that employment situation, right? No harm, no foul. Needs change, right? Business needs change, relationship needs change. But unless you are sound of mind, it's like people who, it's not acceptable to what do they call it? Like go ham sandwich or crash out when your employer lets you go. Same to be said for any other relationships where you're let go. That's the reality of it. But only people who are healthy can say, oh, okay, this is ending. Okay. And walk away from it. So let's see. If you require someone to be specifically capable to build with you, to grow with you, and to heal with you, I think you should hold on to those values because they are invaluable. Someone like that would be invaluable, right? Because not a lot of people can say that they have that. There's a lot of evidence of that in the comments of my my readings even, right? But that's all I have for now. This info can be applied again to any relationships, including children, spouses, friends, business partners, etc., etc. Let's see. The attachment styles that I looked up are on the Attachment Project. It's at attachmentproject.com. That's where I got my research on that. And then my research, this is on spirituality and religion. So that's something different. Let's see. Figured to make it a little bit longer since someone said to end it. Lucky for them, it's in the phone that I'm working on right now. But ultimately, those are all the bits of information from the research. And again, there was someone that was on YouTube and he said something about the research in Finland with respect to the people that you're in the 9th grade with specifically and how that can relate to mental illness and things like that. So if they're seeing how people that you could be in the 9th grade with could affect you to have mental instability, imagine how it would be if you had people that you grew up with or people that you were in a relationship that also had mental instability, but they often go undiagnosed, or this constant trauma bonding, which creates these mental instabilities, right? Something to think about. I hope that this has been helpful, insightful in some way, shape, or form, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.